Okay, so there's different kind of forms, like like with time travel. You're a lot of things like shows. It's like, oh, there's like you look at Back to the Future, and even within its own lore, it's not internally consistent. And so with mine, I have kind of different forms of time travel that are achieved through different means. So there's technological time travel, then there's perceptual time travel, and there's like a variety. Like I have 8 different types in my one book that I explore, and each one functions a bit differently, and some are quite the same. So one of them, I think the first one that's possible to achieve is perceptual time travel. And so that is where you start perceiving time differently, and therefore you can move through time in the same way that like a fish that realizes it's swimming downriver just because it's getting pushed downstream might be able to turn around from going downstream. Of course, it's a lot more complicated than that, but imagine, if you will, what you're perceiving right now. You have almost a railroad of meat and brain circuitry trailing behind you, moving through, like as this planet is moved, like you only are perceiving you're stationary in the same way the fish is perceiving that it is moving upriver, or like the fish doesn't realize that it's moving upriver in the same way that you perceive that you are stationary. Does that make sense? Yeah, because let's say he's trying to, like he's swimming, but the river is pushing him in the same way that we think we are sitting still, and we're maybe we move our body around, but we're actually, it's the structure we are on is moving, as well as it's leaving a trail, yes. Correct. And so each second you're leaving this kind of breadcrumb trail of brain circuitry behind you. That's kind of like, I have different forms of like it. I've had to make up my own language, because our current language doesn't handle time and space as the same thing. We handle it as separate things. Which we perceive them as separately, but they actually function as one. So you have what's called, in my books I outline it a lot better, but I'll give you the Coles notes. So you have what's called pluva, which is like, imagine like kind of pure energy and motion and possibility. That's unperceived possibility and time. So pluva would be like, you have, instead of a big bang like I have 8 different theories that line up with 8 different forms of time travel. So with pluva, you have giant emanations coming out of a big bang per se. And so each emanation, there's not a big bang. It's like, instead of a big bang, imagine just a constantly emanating creation that sends out waves after wave of existence that is perceived and ordered, or it becomes ordered and then becomes perceived. So once life and sentient perception arises, then it can be perceived. And so we are in kind of a transitory zone where we can perceive ourselves, but we don't perceive ourselves kind of properly. Imagine like each part of humanity is actually part of the same giant entity that is kind of burrowing using light through time and space. And each moment you are printing this circuitry behind you, like a railroad track. And so the perceptual time travel is where you would use the railroad track, so to speak, to be able to go backwards. So, like a film that does it kind of well, it's similar, not the same, but similar, because he perceives himself still as separate from the whole. And that's in Butterfly Effect, where he can travel back and forward in time using memory and what have you. And so that's kind of an example of kind of what it's kind of like. But you would also have it like, imagine if you were the way you would start perceiving time and space in this ways. You would look at, like, if you've stood between two mirrors, yes. So you know how, like, when you're standing between two mirrors, you see the mirror that's in front of you stretching off into a event horizon, and then you have the mirror behind you is stretching off behind you into an event horizon, and you are in the cell between those two mirrored points, looking at yourself, perceiving yourself as separate. When when you wave your hand, there is a spot in your past behind you where you were not waving your hand, and there is a space ahead of you, in the mirrors ahead of you, where you are also not, you've ceased waving your hand, and you are making the decision to wave your hand between these two mirrors. But it's just, again, it's a crude kind of metaphor to kind of explore this. No. Oh, really? Free will, yeah. And time cube, really? Oh, cool. I have some other stuff with it that's neat. So I think our past becomes frozen. So imagine that you have the epistles of time. So epistles referring to different forms of, like water is what it's typically used, but I use it for time that has been perceived and solidified is flora, which is like frozen time. So your past has already been perceived, and now it's the way that it is. And then you have what's called, you have flora, then you have ega, which is kind of liquid time, which is the time that you're perceiving. And that's one of the questions is, I bat it around a lot. I used to be quite firmly that there was no free will. But now I think there is, but it's only if you're actually sentient and conscious and you can think a specific way. I think a lot of people they don't possess free will, because they perceive what they're told to perceive, and they view things the way that they are, told to, essentially. They don't actually have a mind of their own. Yeah, they just imagine, if you... Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they just, they're there for the ride, and they're kind of a soulless neurotransmitter machine that doesn't perceive itself in any way or any kind of deeper thought or, concept of spirituality or soul or what have you. And I think soul and spirituality are kind of a part of self-perception and understanding that this body is a vessel that is moving through this phenomenon that we are experiencing, which is life and all that kind of jazz. And so the when it comes to back to the epistles of time, I have whole lectures on this on my YouTube. But anyways, so you have flora, which is frozen time. Then you have ega, which is liquid time. Then you have vetter, which is gaseous, or kind of I guess gaseous time would be the best thing. And then plasma is pluva, and that's kind of that pure, undifferentiated time space. So when you're in ega and you're able to think about what you're perceiving and start to speak and create, or perceive and create and question and actually make your reality what you wish it to be and yourself to wish it to be, then you would be you would have actually ega. You'd be able to exist in the water, the fluid of time, and be able to manipulate reality in the same way a painter can manipulate the canvas that they're painting on. Whereas if you do not perceive yourself, and you do not have any self-awareness or what have you, and you perceive yourself as kind of separate from the whole or what have you, then you would probably just subliminate from flora to Vetter. And so Vetter is kind of like possibilities that can be possible that are being kind of decided on, probably not by you. So people around you. So influencers. So I think a really interesting example of this recently was the Nick Avocado reveal, where he was playing 4D chess, right? And he was doing what I would call 4D chess. And I mean, it's really cool. I mean, I've dabbled a bit in doing 4D chess with a lot of my stuff. I started doing, like in my very early works, I started referring to certain things as part of this 4D chess game I decided to start playing in my mid-20s. And now some of it's coming to fruition, maybe. But anyways, so that would be an example of someone who is kind of, like I say, they are within the ega. They are self-aware. They can manipulate reality. They can manipulate other people, and the other people around them are just along for the ride in their reality, so to speak, almost. And of course, Pluva is, like, imagine like pure possibility. Vetter is what is possible based on where you are. So like the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, really good film. And I don't watch a lot of films. I watch about maybe one movie a year, like that's new. Yeah, yeah. But it's, yeah, really well done. And also, so Pluva would be when she's in the undifferentiated state where she's basically everybody and nobody. And so that's kind of, you know, the what Pluva would be is like that pure possibility where it's not even, you're not even down to, you know, like, who am I and who are you? It's, no, you are everyone and everything, because Pluva is, of course, pure possibility where you could be everybody or anybody. And so that's kind of just a piece of it. So with perceptual time travel, the idea would be if you can perceive that you're in a hall of mirrors and that you are swimming forward, not because you want to swim forward, but because the current is pushing you, then you would be able to move backwards through your mind and memory to different points and seize control of the body using the circuitry. Because imagine I don't know if you've ever had any out-of-body experiences, and that's where a lot of this stuff is coming from. It's my own experiences with that. And during the pandemic, I had, like, during one of the worst parts of it, I started perceiving myself as this kind of brown-haired worm burrowing through space-time, kind of cocooned in light. And I was kind of perceiving myself completely differently. Now, thankfully, I don't see it. Like, I was literally seeing it at the time. Like, I would see myself and that hall of mirrors I'm trying to describe to you. I have to use, like, the problem is the language that I'm bound to, which is why I'm having to make up new words and what have you. But so when I was in that state, I could see everything that ahead and everything behind, and I could, like, it was like, well, I can go backwards and forwards then, right? And so it was a very strange experience to be in. And so that's kind of where some of this is coming from, is those experiences of kind of being outside of time itself and kind of looking down and kind of perceiving myself as, like, imagine you are an appendage of this burrowing kind of almost like coral. Like, we're not, you know, we perceive ourselves as these mammals that are, you know, we walk around and do things, but I think anything, an entity like an alien from like maybe a fourth dimension, it would perceive us as more like a slime mold, because we're all connected going way back, right? And we would be seen as a auto-cannibalizing slime mold too, because we feed upon each other and upon other species that all come from the same tree of life. So when people are like, why haven't aliens come up and said hello? Well, would you say hello to somebody who sits around eating their own fingers? And that would be how anything that's perceiving time the way that I started perceiving it would view us as like as a very insane and strange species that doesn't view itself as actually, it doesn't realize that all of humanity is connected into this giant crawling chaos to quote Lovecraft. So that's the first form of time travel, is kind of manipulating the fact. I mean, then there's the question is, does the past exist still? And so that's the assumption with the perceptual time travel, is that the past still exists, and it's actually right behind you. You are a beast with a billion backs, to quote the Futurama. And so that would be kind of what, each moment you're leaving this basically a railroad train of meat behind that you can move forward and backwards through, maybe. But if the past does not exist, so the whole epistles model that I've made is based on, if it's similar to this time cube, that's really cool. I'll have to look up time cube. I haven't actually seen it. I try not to. Yeah. Yes. And imagine the thing is though, each picosecond separated from the other would be the same as a, they are so different from each other. It's like we only perceive everything as fitting together and being a cohesive story. In the same way that like if you look at a film strip, each frame of the film is actually a separate picture, right? There isn't a continuity between those from second to second. And so the only continuity is the one that you make when you watch it moving forwards rapidly. And so that's kind of some of the questions that, unfortunately, again, I don't think it's as, I know that for me, I imagine myself as like a caveman that got outside the cave, outside of Plato's cave. I'll use that example. And I know that I do not perceive this properly or correctly, and I don't think we actually have the circuitry to do that yet. And so that's where I think genetic engineering would be important. And a lot of my books deal with that, is, can we start making humans that could perceive time differently? And I think some of the organs that you would expand upon would be pituitary gland, for instance, where just out of the blue, for no reason, without any expectation, it will start making a boy become a man and a girl become a woman, just out of nowhere. And so I think the third lobe of the brain that we'll need to kind of enhance would be the pituitary gland into a full lobe on its own, where you would almost have, like, each eye, you have two eyes, they're perceiving, depth perception, depth and width and, length. And then with the third eye, that mystic thing. Yes, a temporal eye, I think, is what we're actually lacking. But I don't know if you need an eye so much to perceive it as if your pituitary gland became, stimulated or changed or enlarged in a certain way that you could start perceiving time like I was starting to perceive it constantly. And so that's kind of some of the ideas around it. Perceptual time travel, though. So all you're doing with perceptual time travel is using the circuitry that is already there, because each moment you're printing a meat railroad through space and time, and you can move forward and backwards through the right disciplines of it, or by accident. And so, or you can at least just view things forwards and backwards through that. So that's I'm recording my responses. I'm kind of just talking about time travel because I write books about it, so I hope that's okay if I'm kind of doing kind of question and answer about my theories of time travel right now, if you want to join in. But don't worry, your voices aren't recorded, so the Time Patrol can't come and get you. Which is another piece, is if any of my theories work, then if any of my 4D chess moves worked, then that would actually might be a thing. And that's another thing my book deals with, is inevitability and what's called the railroad. There's a organization in the books that basically they make sure that time travel gets invented by using time travel to create time travel, and it causes a bootstrap paradox, which is the names of the term used for somebody who can invent time travel is called a bootstrapper. And so it's kind of a neat little thing, but anywho, I don't know what party. Oh, I don't know that one. Yes. Yeah. What else was there? I was gonna. Yeah. So that's perceptual. Then there's levels of there's time manipulation, technological, and that one's a really interesting one because of course everybody loves technology, and it's kind of really cool. So you have, I think it wouldn't just be like we sit down one day and suddenly, we can hop through time. I think it would be, you would start off with just being able to send messages, and you'd have to have them be at a very low bit level. And in my books, I have a bit of kind of pseudoscience stuff. It's a device called a tachyon weir. And so the tachyon weir, you imagine you can't stop a tachyon and redirect it, but you can, like a weir makes a fish. Sorry, I have to use all these stupid metaphors because because I can't. It's so hard to talk about stuff that we haven't actually developed the language or the lobe for. But imagine a fish is swimming downstream. To catch the fish within the moving water, you make a weir, and the weir directs the fish to where you want it to go. So you can't actually stop the tachyon because they're moving backwards through time, but you can make a device that is a weir that directs it where to go. And so with the first piece of the tachyon weir is you would start by firing small, very small bit messages backwards in time towards magnetic centers. So the Earth, of course, if you're thinking about like when I was describing it earlier, you have like you perceive time as this not a undifferentiated mass, but like it's like a railroad moving through time, but you're trying to, like, imagine you're sitting on a train that's infinitely moving forward, and you make a cannon and you fire it up out of the train, and you hit a train car in the past. That's kind of what you're trying to do. Or it's a lot more difficult than that, though. It'd be more like you're shooting at a spinning plate on Jupiter from Taiwan with a BB gun. So the thing is, though, I think like part of it would be you could actually use some of the infrastructure we already have to use for technological time travel. So MRI machines, you always have a date and time that they were activated and turned off. You always have who was inside of it. You always, also a MRI machine creates a huge like a magnetic footprint in space-time, right? And so it's kind of like like you're ringing a bell. You're creating a target that you can actually shoot at. And so with this model, you start to calculate the distance from yesterday to today to tomorrow by looking at what is the movement of the medium we're in, the planet we're on, the solar system we're on, etc. And so by doing all that, you can then go, okay, you would need to be firing at what angle, because we're also moving in a spiral, right? So you're not only firing at a spinning plate, you're actually having to curve your bullet as you're firing at it. But anyways, there's a bunch of formulas I've tried to work out. Anyways, the main thing is you're trying to basically send the message backwards through time to hit a target that we have, and that would be maybe a way to send a message. You could send messages basically like a tachyon radio almost would be kind of the equivalent. You're trying to hit these targets in time, so to speak. So that's the first step towards technological time travel is just using some of these things we already know about, and it does require a bit of like kind of fantasy. I'm a science fiction writer. Of course I have some stuff that we don't have yet, but I've imagined. But I mean, everything that we have, was started out as an idea or a dream or a science fiction story at one point. So I don't really care about that piece. The next piece would be, so you're firing this message, it arcs backwards or forward. Like the thing is, like it's like, again, like we're tied into this like lockstep, and we've crawled into a box that Einstein made, and Newton made the outer shell, and Einstein made the inside. And unfortunately, we're all kind of trapped inside this box of believing time exists in a certain way, which was very useful to get us to here. But now we have to look at the relativity of perception, which is, you are, if you are sentient, and like I was talking about earlier, if you are actually sentient, then you might actually be creating a stable pool of space-time around yourself. And so I have another book I'm trying to work on where it's basically, the society, they have to spend tons of resources figuring out who are the people that actually can perceive and manipulate reality by perceiving it. I'm getting off of track though, back to technological time travel. Anyway, so I'm a talking head right now. Anybody lost or any questions so far? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's very solipsistic. Yeah. 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 And so the question or the comment, how can I, do you want me to explain or answer that? How can I help you with? It's okay. It's all right. Go ahead. Yeah. So the question would be, is there more are we, like in music, you have what's called in canon, right? So you have a different chorus starting at a different time or a different set of musics, and they're playing the same song, but they're starting up at different moments, right? So the question would be, okay, do we actually have separate perceptions, or is it all just one being perceiving all of our lives, and it is separated by bodies and time and space? And so everybody, it's not that you are, the only being in existence, is that everybody is really just like the heads of this very large crawling chaos that is perceiving reality, like a multiplicity, like a hydra, like, and that's part of that when I was talking about, we are kind of like a slime mold to anything that's existing in the fourth dimension. So it would probably perceive us as just one contingent being growing on a piece of what I call astral coral. And that's what beings in the fourth dimension and higher would perceive lower dimensions. We would be almost seen as coral insects that make and broadcast very strange very strange ideas and dreams. And, we have all these weird things that we do, and we're maybe very fascinating to them. And, in the same way that there's scientists that study coral insects and make an entire career, and maybe they find a very peculiar piece of coral that somehow has, I think nuclear weapons is an interesting thing, and I'll get around to that with technological, is so like with, UFO lore, you notice that all these UFO things just around when nukes come up and just a little bit before, And I think it's because when we detonate a nuke, it actually creates a giant, it's like firing a flare gun into the night. And so suddenly these, beings, what have you, they go, hey, wait a second, there's something over there. That's interesting. Let's go check it out. And so then it's a question of like, are we being uplifted? Are we like a coral insect that's merely being studied? Are we actually studying ourselves? Like, is there maybe alien minds are so alien that they couldn't care less about a human being, but a human from the far future or the far past might be very interested in their ancestors or their descendants. So, it becomes a question of, is this like the whole, UFOs abducting people and doing experiments is like, oh, are they kind of like, oh, what were the, like, we're fascinated by Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals and what have you. And, you imagine in a few million years, would they be so interested in, coming down and taking a look at what we are like, their ancestors that, maybe, this was the age that made it. And so one of the big things in my books is called The Hallowed Past and The Promised Future, and that's part of what's the railroad that kind of controls time travel in a lot of the books, or two of the books mainly. The third book, it's what happens is we use time travel and we don't realize what we're doing when we finally do the first experiment with time travel. And unfortunately, it's the equivalent of ringing a dinner bell in a crowded soup kitchen. And so basically, as soon as we do our first time travel, time manipulation test, a fleet of alien ships show up and they say, oh, hey, cool, you invented time travel, let's see your work. And the scientists are like, what do you mean work? It's like, oh, you have to show your work to show that you are actually sentient and self-perceiving beings, or, you're going to have a bad time. So let's see your work. And unfortunately, the scientist who has invented time travel in this, they stole it from somebody else, and they didn't actually understand the formulas the right way, and they didn't actually understand, like, in the same way that I'm talking about things, and some of the things I'm saying probably sound crazy. The person that basically, like, they could understand enough to make a time machine work, but they didn't understand how it worked. In the same way that you and me, I mean, I own an iPhone. I don't know actually how to make that iPhone work. And if an alien pulled me aside and said, okay, explain microelectronics in 300 words, I wouldn't be able to do it. And so basically the scientists in this case for technological time travel, they doom humanity to, the aliens give us a choice. They say, okay, you didn't actually do your own work. You stole these formulas, and the guy has too much pride to admit that he stole them from some hapless nobody that nobody cared about, nobody knew about. You can tell I'm mixing in a bit of my own. There's a bit of a self-insert time travel inventor, and it gets stolen by some famous scientist, which, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, it's just like, a lot of my ideas, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so the aliens, they're like, okay, so since you didn't invent it, these are your options. Option one, we hurl a meteor at your planet, we downshift you. If you bounce back, we'll check back. Basically you can rewrite the test. We're resetting you to the Stone Age. Oh, is that? I don't watch TV, so I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. And so, I've watched the first season, like up to when they bury themselves in the backyard or whatever. That's what I watched, but I didn't watch after that because I did, like I said, I only watch maybe one series a year. I watched Fallout this year. So I don't care about TV too much. I'd rather create than watch. So, yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Ask your question. Sorry about that. They would... Correct. 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 Yes, yes. So we cannot ascend, they cannot descend. And if you look at a lot of scripture, sorry, I've tapped a lot of resources to make a lot of these theories. A lot of scripture actually discusses similar things. They talk about these beings that are made of light that say, oh, we cannot descend to you and you cannot ascend to us. And so I think the only way to communicate is, hallucination, maybe expanded consciousness moments, electronics, I think, would be a way to do it as well. So like if aliens that are in the fourth dimension want to influence the present, they could use computers and computer games and, even this, like you could be, it'd be funny if you were a time traveler coming back to have a chat with the inventor of time travel. And so because you could do it through the medium of an electronic membrane, because with the tachyon weir, you could, when it gets advanced enough, you don't have to just send it through the, fire it backwards into a, heyo. Hiyo. Yes, darn right. I'll be there for the raid night. We're just discussing time travel. If you want to join in, I'm doing question and answer. I'm writing a time travel book, so I'm discussing a lot of the theories and stuff into it. I'm recording my side, but your voices won't appear. It'll just be me chatting with myself. It almost sounds, probably will sound very schizophrenic when it's listened to. Feel free to join us. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. Hopefully you're real. Anywho. Oh, you are? Okay. Thank you. Oh, see you. Aw, I was hoping it was state. That's all right. Where was I? So you would be able to interact, but you'd have to use, I think, because electrons are a bit funny. And I don't know enough about, I'm not a physicist. I've had to self-teach physics to myself, and I didn't do a very good job. I don't understand a lot of it very well. And I mean, a lot of the stuff, I know that, I think the missing equation is we're not looking enough at perception of time and our own perception as being a very important part of it, because a lot of science is okay, be objective as possible, but it's no, everything's about relativity and subjectivity of perception of time, especially. I think the only ways, initially anyways, to interact between these dimensions would be you'd use an electronic medium to interact with almost ancestors, like an ancestor simulation, but it would be you're interacting like we are right now. Like you could do a call through time with a tachyon weir. So the other piece would be, could you, how do you start to physically travel? And there's a few ones that I bat around, and there's in the book there's a few different types. So one of them is everything, since heat death is always approaching, that means the matter in the universe is changing in temperature, and of course as temperatures cool, molecules contract and become smaller and smaller. And so one of the ideas is that in the very, very, very far future, you could have a planet that could travel backwards through time, because the molecules have shrunk to such a small, infinitesimally small size compared to our reality's molecules, that you could actually move between them in the same way that almost like a pachinko machine. Yes, the little ball is going to get batted around, but you could actually bounce around to where your final destination might be. So that's kind of one of the ideas for. And also, the other piece is since we only have this perception of ourselves as these sentient separate beings, and we go around and we're very much tied to our physical bodies, but when if you ever have any of the experiences like I've had with being out of body, it comes down to, okay, well, wait a second. Like, if I am just meat and I'm just circuitry inside that meat, what is it that's looking down at myself right now, outside of myself? And so that's a piece of the kind of the problem of perception in time travel. Is, would you actually maybe sever yourself from yourself if you try to time travel, and would something else slip inside? And so that's one of the factions is in the books. Is there's a faction that they deliberately send out a time travel, very easy way to do time travel. But the thing is, it's imagine like it's like a doomsday formula. They make it very easy to learn, very easy to use, and they give it to civilizations through, let's say, an electronic medium. Like, let's say, like if I was one of these nefarious, they're called the Zorros because it's funny because Zorro, like the masked guy, and Zero, it sounds similar, anyways. So basically, whenever somebody tries to use their technology, you send your chrononauts inside these machines, and then their agents, their minds wake up and have hijacked the bodies, and they're going around doing what they want. And so one of the ideas is in the books, they're trying to turn one of these chrononauts that is actually not human at all. It's not even a human mind. It's one of these things but it's been tricked into thinking it's human. And it's kind of like, how if you raise a cat with a dog, the cat will behave like a dog, or like, if you raise it around hamsters, it's going to be actually nice to hamsters. And that's what essentially in the book, one of the characters is they're not actually a human. It just thinks that it is, even though its mind is actually from outside and beyond. And that's anyway, so I'm going off on a rat bunny trail, and a bit of a talking head. Any questions so far that I don't know if I answered your question very well there. Sorry about that. It's from. Yeah. Totally. Like a snapshot. And I think another piece you can do, like if you do the double mirror experiment, or not even experiment, you're just standing between two mirrors and you look at yourself between those two mirrors, then I think that's a really good example of looking at like the kind of the thinness of each, what I call qubits. So each, like a box of light that you're surrounded by in each moment is one qubit, and it's moving at a certain speed. And what you're doing when you're kind of calculating how to send information backwards or forwards is you're calculating how far is yesterday from tomorrow to today, and what is the curve of that you'd have to fire at outside of time to hit yourself in the past, so that you have the information you need to not do X, Y, or Z. And so that's kind of like in the books. There's a joke that whenever you see a penny and you lean down to pick it up, that's actually the Time Patrol has put it there. And they're getting you to be distracted for a split second so that something will not happen. So like, let's say you won't run into the love of your life, or you will run into the love in your life because you lean down and pick it up. Or this one point, this character almost gets shot in the face, but he leans down to pick up a penny just as the assassin, who everybody thinks is trying to shoot the queen, is actually trying to kill this guy because he goes on and invents time travel. But because he leans down and picks up the penny, he's kind of complicit in what's called the railroad. And so the railroad, of course, is this idea that if time travel is ever possible, it will always be possible, and it'll be self-reinforcing. And everybody that's in what's called the hallowed past, basically, everybody's kind of just marionettes. that are being manipulated by the future so that the future, the promised future, will come to pass. And that's a big conflict in the book, is that, you basically have a hegemony of the future acting upon the past and making the past a certain way so that they will kind of get what they want and, they will exist, of course. And it's part of what's called, it's a Gestalt breakdown, where your sum is not actually equal to your parts. So you're adding up all these parts and it doesn't actually equal the sum, whereas a Gestalt is the sum is greater than the parts added to, the parts are less than the sum. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm saying that right, sorry. I sound very robotic. Oh no, Discord's dying. Well, we're at 45 minutes of time travel lecture, so maybe that's just a sign. The Time Patrol. Yeah, thankfully, they're shutting down the electronic connection because they've got all they needed to make the time machine. So maybe they'll come and save me, because I'm not very happy here and I'd like to go home. I miss my family. I don't like being in a time loop. But did you ever see the McKaylee? Oh, there we go. You fixed it. Nice. Anyways, where was I? The time travel things. So technological. Then the next level is actually making exotic matter. And so Half-Life deals with this, the idea of, you're taking matter from outside and different dimensions and you're manipulating it and changing it. And so one of the things that I look at in my books is kind of looking at, like, there would have been a time where the radioactive, hello? Oh, I guess the Time Patrols doesn't, they wanted to let us know that they're listening. Spooky. Oh, that's closer to me. Yeah, it's closer to me because I'm out in the middle of Saskatchewan, Alberta, on the border. So the where was I? Oh yes, technological. So the next level would be, how do you actually travel? So one of them, like I said, there's gonna be a time maybe in the future where a particle is so small it's like I have what's called a Hadal pomegranate. So imagine a pomegranate from the very start of time. That pomegranate that exists has more energy than an atomic bomb being detonated today because of the entropy surrounding it. Of course, that's a very crude and inaccurate comparison, but the idea of the Hadal pomegranate, that pomegranate that exists right after the universe exists, would have so much energy compared to matter today. And so you think about, like, there was a time where the half-life on, let's say, uranium, other transuranic metals, plutonium, etc., it would not have run, the clock hasn't run as long, so there would be a lot more of it, and there would also be different types of, like light that we wouldn't even have the organs to perceive. So I actually work with three types of spectrums in my books. You have the spectrum that we perceive, and then there's a ancient spectrum, and then there's a future spectrum. Because of entropy, you're going to have a time where the energy is much, much lower. So a car battery from now would have the equivalent of their nuclear power plant, because they'll have so much a difference of energy and also just light. And so the far past spectrum is very much like, again, it's colors that we can't perceive, but imagine just the brightest, purplest, tealest, turquoise, those kind of very bright like colors beyond brightness. And then the far future spectrum is dark browns and very muddy and very kind of mottled reds and oranges. Red would be the brightest color to them, and they would have a black so deep it would be like Vanta black, but blacker than that. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, you can't in the same way that a let's say one of those fourth dimensional aliens, how they would probably be very fascinated on how we perceive light and life, in the same way that like what does it look like in a bug? But I mean, a termite can't write a novel, a human can, and so I think that's interesting. Another piece is so technological time travel again. I think it actually is picking up a very faint piece of your guys' voices. I think because my microphone is so sensitive. I'll have to re-listen to this and make sure. Is it okay that there is kind of maybe a bit of your guys' voices, or I can go back and just clip you all out so that's just me answering questions? You don't care? I'm just using Microsoft Sound Recorder, and it's just on my microphone. But I have one of those condenser mics. It's very powerful. So I think it's actually, like I can see tiny, tiny bips when you guys talk. But when I'm doing it, it's like giant spikes. So I'm going to have to listen to it again. But if you don't care, then that's okay. And if you do care, let me know now. Go. I do lectures. I do lectures on this. I have a YouTube. Yeah, Tony. I think I've shown Tony. My YouTube where I talk about all this. Like I have lectures where I just go on for an hour just about the epistles of time. Yeah, so I just uploaded onto that, and I do one once in a while, and I haven't been doing some, but I'll just share it with Tony, but maybe don't put it in the general chat because I don't want just random people coming and talking to me. Because I'm a bit of a recluse, as you can probably tell. Anywho, great. So yes. So question. Sorry. What did you have another question, or did I even answer your previous one? Okay. Good. Okay. So technological time travel. Back to that. So the other piece would be exotic matters. So I think would be interesting is, can we create exotic matter by interacting with extreme points of our 3D space-time? So you look at like a black hole, or what I call a white bowl. So like the black hole, of course, is the singularity. Everybody is familiar with those. A white bowl would be the opposite. It's constantly pushing out matter. It's kind of like imagine the rear end of a black hole would be a white bowl, and the mouth end of a white bowl would be a black hole. And so we don't have any, from what I know, any of our scans of the sky, we don't perceive any white bowls like in astrophysics yet. But I think as soon as they start appearing, we would be moving past what's called the dimensional equator. So another theory of the time travel, so if you scrap everything I just said about time moving forward, and the we're kind of caught in the river. Imagine what's called a chronosphere. So a chronosphere, imagine a beach ball, and each stripe of the beach ball is like a time zone moving down along the sides of the beach ball, and as it they're all separate, right? So you have at the top of it a North Pole almost and a South Pole. And so the thing is, what you're doing as you are alive and perceiving the reality around you, you are moving down one of the stripes of the beach ball from the start of your life to the end of your life. And that's because at the start of your life, there's a ton of possibility. It looks very similar to the Dyson, what's it called? Dyson, not Dyson. What's his name? Rosen-Einstein bridge. It's similar to that, but they because it's presented in a flat 2D plane, it loses kind of, I think, of how it actually works, is that reality inflates until there is sentient perception, and then the beach ball starts having more and more slices. And in the books, there's only 48 or no 52, I believe, people that are actually creating the islands of perception that you can exist on a planet. And that's where the Mandela effect gets accounted for in the books, is that because for billions and millions of years, it didn't matter what happened in Africa to somebody in North America. Like, let's be honest, it didn't matter that Nelson Mandela died in prison. Yeah, he could have been some great orator, he could have done whatever X, Y, and Z, but it didn't matter because he's on another continent. And so we never noticed any of the discrepancies between the time zones or the different parts of the planet because everybody was kind of in the same boat. And they were all being carried along by people that were kind of anchor people, like anchor points that are perceiving and generating the reality and speaking and creating, because they're sentient. They're not just a neurotransmitter machine. And that's another piece of the book is, how do people justify the enslavement and maltreatment of others? So you have, for manning the time machine, you have to realize that, anybody who's going to be a time trooper, sending somebody back, that's a pretty terrible job to have, because it's like, okay, you will never come home. Like that's going to be a one-way trip until you're very advanced. So the first time troopers, they're all in the books. I made up a slang. It's called a ginkgo. And so ginkgos are basically, imagine you take a human, you splice their genes with a ginkgo tree, because that way there is so much difference between a ginkgo and you and me that they can justify doing anything that we can do to a tree, we are justified doing to a ginkgo, because they have such different genes than us. And that's one of the reasons. It's a lot of it's I'm very interested in the technology of time travel, but I'm much more interested in what are the social ramifications for when you have, let's say, the future starts dictating what happens in the past. What happens to it's like, in the book there, it turns out that originally the biggest fascist empire of Europe was not going to be that Austrian painter that I don't want to say because I'll get demonetized. But it's actually Vincent van Gogh, and he gets shot in the middle of a field randomly by a time assassin, and he dies before he can re-raise the Dutch East Indies Empire and turn Europe into a capitalist hellscape. So that's kind of... oh, hello, we have a new guest here joining us for our lecture. Welcome. I'm okay. Well, thank you for joining me. And my I guess this is kind of like a TED talk, and we have somebody new. I'm kind of just talking about my time travel theories right now. If you're wanting to join and listen, that's great. Or if you want to ask questions, I'm more than happy to. I'm writing a time travel epic. It's 3 books long. It's longer than Lord of the Rings right now. I'm doing edits. And so I'm just talking about some of the theories and ideas that are going into it and answering questions that I go. I've gotten the recording to be mostly, I think it's not picking up any of your voices. I'll have to go back, but it's picking up definitely mine, and it might have a hint of yours, but for the most part, it looks like you'll be pretty inaudible. So that's that. Welcome, though. Welcome to the lecture, I guess. You gotta go. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, and thanks so much for coming in and asking some really good questions too. And I feel like I need to brush up on my pulp culture now. I don't. I need to maybe watch more television. I just I don't bother usually. Oh yes, yeah. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. 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 Which one? Everything Everywhere All at Once? Oh yeah, that one's really good. Yeah, that was everything. That was a very good film, very fun film, and it kind of uses, like I was talking about earlier, the perceptual time travel, where it's like they're getting her to move through, this neural network to go to different points in the multiverse. The thing is, because the problem with the multiverse is like, well, if everything is possible, then like, like it breaks down some of the dramatic tension, because like, well, we can just always go to a different planet. So I get around that with what's called, so like we've only found 52 perfect numbers right now. We've been searching for quite a while, since antiquity, and with computers we're getting a bit better. But the problem is with infinity is that it's not that, like, technically speaking, yes, there are infinite dimensions, there are infinite U's, but there's only so much time to search for them. And so as long as we have time as a constraint, and you only have so many perfect dimensions, and so each dimension in my books corresponds with a perfect number, because they're the only ones balanced enough that don't implode or explode. Don't implode into a white ball, or collapse into a black hole, or explode into a white ball. Which, of course, people are saying, hey, it's weird, like we're the universe that we're in keeps on getting, like, it's expanding faster and faster, and so are we actually, is that a natural piece of, what's going on for us, or is it, maybe we're moving towards the crevasse, but part of the chronosphere idea is that each time zone you have, like, imagine each time zone as a strip of perceptual space-time that's moving, being emanated from the North Pole. It moves downwards past the the dimensional equator, down to the South Pole of the chronosphere, where it is then consumed by the black hole, and then it's re-emanated from the North Pole again. And one of the realities in the book is that Earth is actually, we exist inside one of those, and we haven't met any aliens from not Earth, because there's only Earth. We exist inside, basically, we exist between a white ball and a black hole. All the governments have lied to us, and we don't actually exist even on a like a full sphere, but more like imagine a kind of like a donut that's eating itself. But I'm getting off point. Sorry. Yeah, sure. Another question. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. No. I mean, I think it's kind of like maybe a pull point, maybe, but I don't think it's a start. I believe in emanations theory is what I'm kind of, that's the name I've thrown on it, because I like the Kabbalah. And so it's all the Sephirot and the Tree of Life. They talk a lot about divine emanations, and I'm going to butcher it horribly. So, if there's any Zohar fans that listen to this, please don't get mad at me. But I don't think it's a beginning and an end. I think it's just emanation after emanation and iteration after iteration, as whatever is perceiving reality is trying to get it to be the best of all possible worlds, or whatever is maybe the most entertaining, or maybe what is the most interesting. And it's all about what holds your attention. And when you think about when you are moving through life, you're this fish swimming through this river, and you move towards the things that are shiny, that are lures, and those things drive you to different points and get you to do different things. So for myself, let's say, there was this girl I knew back in my university days, named Jessie. She was this gorgeous woman, but I never hooked up with her. I got distracted by, of course, my writing, my plays, and so if I had not been that I would have gone down a completely different stream of kind of consciousness, to a different point. And at this point in my life, 2024, nearly, goodness, I don't know how many years that is ago now, like almost 20 years ago, I would be, in a completely different realm of, like, I would be on the same, the vibration and the emanation would be different, but I would be still me, my soul, perceiving this mind, this body, this place. I don't know if that makes sense, or how you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. The penny. Yeah, the penny moment. Yeah. Exactly. And now this is like a really bad pun, and I mean, it's funny because it's like, you get distracted by a penny, and so there's the Big Bang Theory show. This was an unintentional pun, and I just realized it. Is so there's that blonde girl that's distracting them all from inventing time travel and actually doing anything with their careers, Penny. And that's funny synchronicity. And that's kind of when I talk about Uvatonian metaphysics, you start to look at you are wearing a sweater in a photo in the future, so you have to receive the sweater in the past. Let's say you make a post on a video in the present. It's because you have to have that post on that video in the future. And it starts to break, you start to, like when I talk about free will and not being influenced, it's like when you have moments of, oh, I need to do this one thing, ask yourself, okay, is this me deciding this, or am I being influenced? Or is there a penny that I've kneeled down to pick up to, do that? So yeah, it's a very fun thing. And the thing is now the book, it only the book that I'm writing, you can read them forwards or backwards and forwards. You can read them in any order, because a good, I think, time travel, time loop novel should be able to be read and perceived in any order. But the book is very different depending on the order it is read. So, for instance, there is one character who you get to know her with 3 different names. You get to know her as Sandy Loam, because I love puns. You get to know her as Cassandra Fossil, and you get to know her as Candy or Sandy Beach. Now, the thing is, depending on the order you read the 3 books, you will either read the first time you meet her is maybe Cassandra or Sandy or Candy, but the middle of the name Cassandra, I use 2 C's as a proper C, so a C with an S. You know how English has this peculiarity where we use C both to represent a K sound and a C sound? If you read the book where Cassandra is the first, you meet her first as Cassandra, when you read the Candy book, you will read the C at the front of her name as a S sound, and therefore she will be Sandy Beach instead of a Candy Beach. And if you read the book where it is Sandy Loam, then when you read the next one, you will read it as Candy Beach, because you're probably reading it with an English hard C, like this hard C sound, that would be a K. And of course, Cassandra in the book has a K at the front of her name to differentiate this. And so I play with language like that. And the thing is, you will read a different book depending on the order you read. So imagine if Lord of the Rings, you could read in any order. And so you would actually perceive the book and the story differently depending on the order they are read. And that's kind of some of the fun I'm having with the book, and some of the things I think will be very entertaining for people to kind of pick through and see what I've done. So you only learn about the penny theory in one of the books. But if you read the penny theory in, like, let's say you read the book with Candy Beach or Sandy Beach, depending on, it's again like quantum physics, that fun idea of, it's a maybe, which one do you perceive it? Then you read the other ones, you will read the penny moment and go, oh my gosh, the time patrol was intervening at that point. But if you read the other books first, and then you read up to the book where you find out about the candy theory, or the penny theory in the Candy Beach book, then you will go, wait a second, in hindsight, I remember so-and-so leaned down and picked up a penny right as that person was trying to shoot them. Wait a second. And so it's like I'm playing a lot with perception and language, the words and how we say them, and also just a lot of really interesting stuff. So one of the things in the books that, is, I think, the most integral technology to develop time travel is the problem that if anything goes wrong with any of these theories or formulas that I've made, it'll probably cause the universe to collapse in on itself and maybe wipe everything out. So I proposed what it's called a new language called Ilangani. Ilangan. I can't pronounce it very well yet. It's, again, I'm having to make up words by myself. I don't get to say them out loud to people. It's just me on a keyboard. So Ilangani. N-A-L-I. So it's the same forwards and backwards. And this whole language, you can read it forwards and backwards, and each word is the same. So like a Toyota is the same forwards and backwards. And the main character in the one book, his name is Aboba, which is the same forwards and backwards. And same with his love interest, which I won't reveal the name, because if you do pick it up, I don't want it to all be spoiled. I won't tell you. But anyways, so the most integral technology is not actually your bells and whistles, the time machines, the formulas, the MRI machines that can intercept a tachyon, whatever. It's actually the invention of a language that can function if we actually hit a point where time starts reversing, and let's say your perception is getting pushed backwards through your entire life. Like imagine, if we hit that moment right now, everything starts going in reverse and you hear all this language in reverse. If I could say to you, Aboba, Ili, Lahali, Ata, I don't have the last piece of the sentence yet, then you would hear that and go, oh, wait a second, Lahali and Aboba, Ada, oh, we've hit a time reversal. There's a time disaster happening, and I have to try and remember that story as I move backwards through time. And so it's kind of, if you saw the Darmok episode of Star Trek, part of it is that we would have to communicate to each other using stories with a very short phrase that would be communicatable forwards and backwards the same. And so, I have it here. It was Aboba, Ili, Lahali, Ata, Zolgar. Zol. How do I? Sorry, again, I only write this stuff down. I don't get to say it to anybody. That's why I probably mispronounced a lot of words as I've spoken to you today, because some of these words they're ones I've made up, and some of them it's me just just saying. I just sit around making these things up. I have to find it. Where is it? Where is it? There it is. Oh, no, maybe not. You gotta go. You're right. You're welcome. Hold on, we need to make sure we include the phrase in this lecture in case of a time reversal. Oh, yes. There it is. It'd be Aboba, Ili, Casa, Sak, Ata, Zolgo. And so the idea would be that if you could hear that forwards and backwards, I don't know. Again, I'm trying to work with stuff that's, it's very weird and theoretical and very strange. But the idea would be if you hear that and you're moving backwards in time, since you could understand it forwards and backwards, then you could go, oh, wait a second, I read about this in a book, I've hit a time reversal, and that's kind of what's happening to me right now. But anyways, so thank you so much for everybody joining me for this very strange lecture, and I hope that I've been able to answer your questions, and this was good. So thank you, everybody.